Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Antje and today I'll be talking about Beach Read by Emily Henry, which is a contemporary romance novel where we are following the main character January, who I'll be referring to as Jan from now on just because I can't wrap my tongue around her name, who is a romance author who's published 4 books up to this point and is supposed to soon hand in the 5th manuscript, but she's been struggling with writer's block ever since her father died, and she found out that he'd been living a double life together with a mistress and that they even had a beach house together. And because she is super broke at this point and she wants to overcome her writer's block as quickly as possible, she decides to move into this beach house on Lake Michigan and just get down to writing. But she quickly realizes that her neighbor is her former arch nemesis from college, Gus. And Gus is also a writer, but he's more in the literary fiction or dark literary fiction genre. And I don't remember why, but the two of them form this bet where they have to write a book in the genre of a person, and whoever manages to write their book first or sell it first wins this challenge. And over the course of the next 3 months, of course, they grow closer and closer together because this is a romance novel. And first off, the cover of Beach Read is slightly misleading because it just looks so happy and kind of indicates that this is going to be a fluffy read, but it really is not. It is a romance novel, but both characters, so both Jan and Gus, are kind of going through their own issues and trying to work through them and what has happened to them so far in life. So a big part of the novel is about how we become who we are and how we just deal with certain topics differently depending on our childhood and just what we've gone through in general. There is a lot of crying in Beach Read, though it doesn't amount to the drama you find in Colleen Hoover type of books where your heart breaks, but there is just a lot of tension going on at times. But in general, the romance and the sexual tension still are the main focus of the book. I think I didn't really like Beach Read that much, but I also have to be fair and say that I listened to this audiobook within 3 days. I listened to the last 2 hours of the audiobook straight through because I just wanted to finish it. And there was one point where I actually felt for Jan and found myself crying because of a situation she was in, and I could relate that much. But just saying that I disliked it would not be quite fair, and I just feel bad because it would feel like unnecessary bashing. But in general, it was a mere kind of book with a couple of good moments interspersed into it. My main issue with Beach Read was the characters and the writing style. Most romance novels, or quite a few, follow this formula of you have 2 characters who like each other, they grow closer and closer, they have this one romantic moment, then there is a huge miscommunication and everything seems to be lost and blown up, and then this miscommunication is solved and they live happily ever after. And I have no problem with this formula. I like books like that. So, for example, I like The Holidays, which I read before Christmas. It is a formula that works, so I would never bash a book that used this, and it's fun. Many movies use it. But what I don't like is if it's just about miscommunications, and January and Gus are so frustrating characters because neither of them are able to communicate clearly. And this book is just the series of minor miscommunications until it gets to this big miscommunication, and I think after that the book stops, thankfully, because these 2 people are just so ridiculous. I think this level of miscommunication might be fun and cutesy if they were in their late teens or early tweens, because they've never interacted with the opposite sex before. But the 2 are in their late 20s and early 30s, and that look just isn't cute, and it had me so frustrated because instead of just sitting down and saying how they felt about certain issues, they just beat around the bush, and that was actually a reason for a lot of the crying that Jan had, just because they were not talking honestly with one another and they just seemed so emotionally immature, and they were writing emotionally mature books or books that had a lot of emotion in them, so one would think that they would be able to just say, hey, I feel like this, or I don't want to talk about this and this because of this. And yeah, didn't like the miscommunication. I just wanted there to be a proper conflict at some point, and it never happened. I think that was also the reason why I started crying at one point, because the communication was just so bad. And I remembered a scene happening very similar once, but at that point I was 15 or 16 and not 29, and I just had no sympathy whatsoever. And I didn't think they should end up together, because people who are not able to talk to one another shouldn't be together. And from the moment on, when you are not rooting for the two characters to end up together, a romance novel kind of loses everything that's going for it. I mean, that's the point. You're supposed to root for the characters and do nothing else, but I just couldn't do it. And I was kind of hoping they'd go apart, find partners that fit to them, and would never speak again. Another thing I didn't really like about Beach Read, it didn't bother me at some point, I just thought it was hilarious, is Emily Henry's use of similes. Because this book is just jam-packed with them. I think for every 5 minutes that I listened to the audiobook, I heard 10 of them. My favorite was, his eyes were hot as oil. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. That was my personal highlight of the book. The others weren't quite as weird, but it was just an absolute overuse. I don't know what she was trying to do with this overload of similes, but yeah, I couldn't take the book seriously because of that. And a second thing was that she was obsessed with Gus's crooked mouth. I stopped counting after she had mentioned his crooked mouth this 5th time, but she still mentioned it a couple of times after that. So I think she probably had a certain person in mind or a certain image, and she was personally attracted to this crooked mouth, because there was no reason again for using it, and she was really fixated on it. Like, she didn't even mention his eyes as often as this crooked mouth. And I personally could not envision Gus, so her telling me that he had a crooked mouth, I always had this egg in mind with a crooked line, and that was it. Not very sexy, not very engaging for me personally. There are still 2 other points in the Beach Read that really bothered me. They aren't points where I would say they made the book worse necessarily. Well, maybe a bit. These are personal pet peeves, and one of them is the portrayal of poor people. A major point of the Beach Read is that Jan moves into this beach house because she is so broke, and at some point she even goes shopping, looks at her bank account and sees she has $16 left for food for I think a week or 2. Okay, no problem there, but the thing is, I think from a week later onwards she is ordering in food non-stop. And if you've ever been on a budget or been to uni, you know that ordering in is super expensive, and if you only have $16 per week, you can't afford to do that more than 1 or 2 times, and you won't be eating anything anymore. And there's no explanation as to where this money magically is coming from, or why finances are suddenly no issue. I think even when she starts ordering in, she later says, oh, there's some party and she couldn't afford to buy a dress. Girl, just stop ordering in then. The second thing I did not like, and I think I already mentioned this in my review for One Day in December, is the normalization for massive consumption of alcohol. Jan and Gus are drinking alcohol on a daily level from like noon onwards, and it's portrayed as something quirky or normal, which I really do not like. Plus, they go on excursions where it is mentioned that they're taking the car and they drive out for 1 or 2 hours, they do whatever, and they're always drinking like high percentage alcohol. And before they drive back home, it is mentioned that they drink coffee to sober up, but coffee does not sober you up. It doesn't do anything for the metabolism of alcohol. It just makes you more awake. You're still drunk. And they do this like 5 or 6 times within this book where they are drunk driving. And again, not mentioned at any point that this is a dangerous myth, or Emily Henry is perpetuating like myths when it comes to safe drinking. And something like that just really annoys me. I don't know whether the drinking laws and driving laws are different in America, so but still, it does not seem like a wise thing to do. Thankfully, the characters are in their late 20s, early 30s, so hopefully 18 to 22-year-olds aren't picking up this book and thinking that they can drink and drive if they drink coffee in between. but I just hate it. I hate it when alcohol is normalized in such a way. That was it for now. As I said, I don't want to bash this book completely. I mean, I've talked about quite a few negative points just because it was a meh book and I wanted to be blown away. I think it got the Goodreads Choice Awards for 2020, so I was hoping for something more amazing, especially as I saw so many 5-star reviews for this book, but it didn't do that much for me. And yeah, the similes and the miscommunications were just, they didn't work for me. And yeah, that is why I won't be recommending this book, because it's also only 8 hours long as an audiobook, and I prefer audiobooks that give me more value for my money. I want to thank you so much for watching this video until the end. Please like it and subscribe to my channel, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Bye.